they said. It's too gimmicky, awarding championship points from a computer game. It's one step too far. Oh, those naysayers were wrong. This is the end of the third season of the Fanatec GT Pro Series, where we do award real-world championship points from our virtual world, Assetto Corsa Competizione. Welcome to the final round here in Barcelona. 3 glorious years of this now iconic Fanatec Arena, which houses 24 of their cutting-edge sim rigs, but also now has so many memories for us over the last couple of years with all of the history. It's probably time we look back on the first 3 years of this amazing structure. After all, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. Our story starts in the COVID-inflicted world of 2020. With little real-world racing able to take place, sim racing blasts into the limelight, with global competitions and superstar drivers giving racing fans some much-needed relief. This is when two-man had a vision. Fanatec founder and CEO Thomas Jackemeyer and SRO Motorsports Group head Stefan Rattel. Their plan was simple, if not a little controversial. Why not get real-life GT3 drivers to compete in esports with real-life championship points as a reward? To keep the sim racing as closely linked to real world as possible, the Fanatec Arena was created alongside digital partner AK Informatica and constructed within the Fanatec GT paddock for the first time at Monza in 2021. And that would set the scene for a series of world-leading events. I cannot believe what an amazing 3 years it's been. And in this last year, of course, adding to the Fanatec GT series, we're using the Fanatec Arena for the Sim Pro series powered by Rafa Racing. So many memories, but there's a huge amount that goes on behind the scenes to make it all happen. So here's a little tour with AK Informatica's boss, Alessio. Ciao, Alessio.
Ciao, Ben. Yes, this time I'm going to show you what's behind the scene, how this series is made. Let's start from the broadcast, where Weave is taking care about the live production. We have a sound engineer that is mixing all the different sources on the arena and on the live streaming. We have a main director that is managing all the camera feeds coming from the robotic camera, the face cameras, and also from the in-game productions that is managed by AK UK. So we are collecting all the feed from Assetto Corsa Competizione and mixing all together to show you a proper racing action. But now it's time to go on the more technical racing part of the backstage. Welcome to our backstage office, where we have the race direction, the project manager, PR and social media, our commentators studying the drivers, the standings and everything that is needed to comment the proper race. And we have the server manager that is really important during an esport race. And that's how this started back in 2018 with Kuno Simulazione and SRO Motorsport. We have Davide Brivio, game director of Kunos, and Anthony Coma, that is head of business development in SRO Motorsport. Davide, how it's been the challenge for Kunos to make this series?
Well, the challenge for us has been understanding that differently from other esports discipline, motor esport is actually a sport with athletes that are training on virtual cars, but feeling the same things that they feel on the real car. So the challenge for us has been to keep our simulation constantly up to date, constantly interesting and linked to the reality under the handling and sensations point of view. We talked with engineers, drivers and manufacturers in order to do all of this, and thanks to Fanatec, AK and SRO, we now have an arena where the sport can be applied and executed like in the real life.
And Anthony, how has been for SRO the challenge to make this series a reality?
So it was a big gamble that we took with Fanatec, and there was a lot of parties needed to be convinced. Firstly, the teams and the drivers, because integrating something like esports within the real championship points had never been done before. And originally these guys, they're here to race cars on the real track. So bringing them over to the sim, we thought would be very difficult. And in the end, I think when everyone turned up in Monza and saw what we have done, the efforts from Kuno's side, working with you guys, the arena, and that we were doing something so professional, I think everyone quickly changed their minds and adapted. And I think once we got the teams on board, the rest was history. And moving forward, it's become an integral part of the championship. And I think, you know, with Fanatec and Kunos and AK as our partner, we've done something incredible, new, and we'll forever be the first ones to have done it, so we can be proud.
And all of this wouldn't be possible without Fanatec. So let's meet Florian Merning, is the head of eSport in Fanatec. And Florian, how was for Fanatec to make this series?
It was a real challenge for us because we worked with the real drivers in esports competition for the first time, and they have different needs compared to the sim drivers. So we try to set it up as realistic as possible for them to feel like they do in a real car. And of course, we also use their feedback to further improve our products.
For sure was not an easy job, mate. And Ben, now it's time back to you.
And that brings us to where we are today, with all three championships still on the line here in Barcelona. Last time out, it was a massive haul of points for this car with Sandy Mitchell aboard, and the first victory for Lamborghini. Green flag flies and we go racing here at Nürburgring for round 4. Sandy Mitchell has the lead of the race in towards turn 1. A little bit of contact for third position as Dan Harper on the inside gets spun around by an out of control Audi, is that? And Harper's going to be really compromised. We've got another spinner in the middle of the pack. That's going to leave the Lamborghinis 1-2 at the head of the field, with Lauren Heinrich up to third, Ayachan Guven fourth. Oh, and all three BMWs at the back of the pack. Looking into the downhill right-hander, more contract further back, and who has got spun around there?
Ooh.
Crestani.
Right up there at the front of the field now as Dan Harper goes on the attack.
Harper makes that one very easy, almost Nicholas Nielsen saying, just please come past, I'm not going to fight you here. And obviously Nielsen feeling that that car has nowhere near the pace that you would expect, but it does look damaged to me.
There is a Nicholas Nielsen looking a little bit spicier.
Oh no, he tries to go around the outside, he drifts around the outside, but unfortunately does lose the momentum to Cesar Gazoo. Gazoo and Nesov dropping into this pack actually. Mies in the second of the Santalok Audis, the other one is for Erwin Bastard. Crestani has now retired out of the race. Regal never started in the Aston Martin, which was a bit of a shame. Ateki looks to the inside, and it's a great opportunity to overtake here. You don't need to go ahead, you just need to claim the apex. Is doing, oh, and Jordan Pepper loses a position to Dan Harper, and Dan Harper instantly gives it back. So I think there was a little bit of naughtiness between the two of them. The BMW's a big car, and he just gave him enough of a nose. Williams wants to go to the left, but he has to go to the right. He's later on the brakes. Can he go all the way around the outside? Absolutely not. Whoa, big slide from Marius Zug. Now here's the opportunity. Down the inside, there's contact between the two of them. Where is Zug now? No, there's still some. Oh, comes back onto the circuit, spins around. Nesov is trying to get involved there. And what a fight between the two of them. But Williams now takes the position with 2.5 minutes remaining. It's their European World Final on Friday. Find a new star in the sim racing series. But Sandy Mitchell is the star tonight. He takes victory. Lauren Heinrich over the line. In the Pro Championship, Rutronic Racing leads the way thanks to the superb consistency of Lauren Heinrich, with Sandy Mitchell's win last time out in Germany moving KPax Racing to second and still with a chance to win the championship overall. In gold, just 2 points separate Team WRT from Winwood Racing, and the championship will come down to a straight fight between Callan Williams and Marius Zug. And it's just as tight in silver, with Boutsen VDS holding a slight point advantage over Mad Panda Motorsport, who know how to win, as do Trezor Attempto, still just in title contention. So without further ado, let's go racing.
So the final round then is about to get underway of the Fanatec Esports GT Pro Series. We've had 4 fantastic races so far, and Ben Constantiouris, it all comes down to this. One final hour of racing to determine all of our champions. This promises to be quite dramatic.
It's our championships in the sim racing world being established tonight, but let's not forget, that Fanatec boost points get converted into championship points for the overall championship out there in the real world. And we have not the last round of the championship this year in Barcelona. Usually over the last couple of years, we've ended the real world championship here in Barcelona as an endurance race, but this year, in a couple of weeks' time, you're off to Zandvoort to finish the series, so we can't crown everything today.
Not quite, no. It's a bucket and spade job in the Dutch seaside town of Zandvoort in a couple of weeks, but as far as this evening is concerned, qualifying done. We're about to go racing very shortly. It is a quality entry, and now it really matters, partly because of those points, partly because of pride. There is a lot at stake, not only in pro, but in gold and silver as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember, 3 races in one this evening. So we have a grid of 24 cars, 24 rigs over my shoulder, but they're divided into the classes that they exist in out there in the real world. So the pro, the silver, and the gold categories are obliged to actually enter a car into this virtual series, at least one in each team. And then is the squabble in the team as to who is actually going to be participating and who is not. Now, you may have noticed that we did not have a track lap. Usually, for the last 3 years, we've shown you around and shown you how exactly the same the track in the real world is to the virtual world. But over the last couple of years here in Barcelona, they've been changing a few things, and we unfortunately do not have the exact same track as outside.
But what we do have is an extra challenge for the drivers in this race, because we have the chicane, which they don't have to cope with in the real world. It gives you perhaps another incident zone. It gives you perhaps, if you're really brave, another opportunity to overtake if you send it down the inside. But it's also a challenge for the drivers, because if they've been on track today, they've got used to one circuit, then they've had to come in here and do the pre-qualifying and the qualifying, and now a race with a slightly different configuration of circuit. That's going to be a test for them, and again, quality will show through, won't it?
And it's absolutely a proper reset tomorrow morning when they go into free practice in the real world again. And you've got to remember that that chicane isn't there, and the braking zone at turn 10 is a little less heavy than it is in our game. So that's one of the reasons why we're racing here on Friday evening as well, rather than right in the center of the weekend, because honestly, drivers are simple fellows, and it's been quite hard to adapt.
Now, as far as pro is concerned, it is going to be a battle between Lauren Heinrich, between Sandy Mitchell and Ayan Guven. And after qualifying, Lauren Heinrich is third on the grid. Ayan Guven lines up 9th, and Sandy Mitchell, who carries extra ballast because of winning last time out, is, by his high standards, way back 13th. The man on pole position, though, this evening is Fabrizio Crestani. Callum Williams lines up with him at the front of the grid, ahead of Lauren Heinrich, and then Adam Ateki, who is the second quickest out of gold, ahead of Alex Arca and then Nicholas Nielsen. Next, there is Alexei Nesov and Charlie Fagg. Ayan Guven is 9th on the grid. Nikolai Schiergaard will line up 10th, and then 11th is Dan Harper, and 12th is Jordan Pepper. Then Sandy Mitchell, who's got work to do, admittedly, ahead of Cesar Gazot. Gilles Magnus goes from 15th. 16th, Pierre-Louis Chauvet, ahead of Marius Zug, who starred in that drama late race at the Nürburgring. Thomas Drouet has been quick in esports in the past. He's 18th, ahead of Daniele Diamato. And a long way back by his high standards is Charles Weerts. Then Sam de Jonge and Christopher Meeks, only 22nd. He, in turn, is ahead of Nicholas Bart and Paul Everard, with the last 3 being Romain Leroux, Ricardo Feller, and Maro Engel. So you've got some big names, Ben, what you might sort of describe as out of position. A long way back, needing to make progress.
Well, it depends on what you look at in a form guide. If you're looking at out on circuit in the real world, the form is so different here to the virtual world. You talk about Charles Weerts, for instance. Team WRT in that car this year have shared that seat across all of their 3 drivers. There's 3 drivers, there's only 5 rounds, so only one driver gets to do 1 round, and that's Charles. So he's a little bit on the back foot in comparison to the points that, for instance, Dries van Thor and Sheldon van der Linde, both incredibly good in the sim, have been able to accrue. They aren't in championship contention, though, today, a little bit too far off, because Lauren Heinrich, who is also a sim racing pro for Porsche, as well as a pro in the real world, he has got himself well ahead in that pro standings.
So he's a pro, a sim pro, and a pro sim?
Yes, I suppose so.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Excellent. See, I'm learning fast. He's also perhaps going to be the man that wins the championship, because he is in the box seat, isn't he? He comes into this really needing Sandy Mitchell to win, and Lauren Heinrich being out of the top 5 and not scoring. And that, looking at qualifying, is unlikely.
Yes. 4 points being the gap. But the other 2 classes, silver and gold very, very nice and tight, and we'll keep you up to date with the championship standings as we go through our 1 hour race, which has a pit stop in the middle of it, let's not forget. And that pit stop has dictated the race performance in the last couple of events, because if you don't go into your box absolutely perfect and you are slightly to the left, right, front or back, the game punishes you so heavily. You lose 4, 5, 6 seconds depending on how far out of that box you are. And we've seen that the professionalism of this championship has built so much over the last couple of years. That now is the difference between winning and losing.
Are we right in still referring to it as the game punishes you rather than the software? Because, as you said in your opener to all of this, we've come a long, long way in those 3 years of this championship. And, okay, this is as close to the real world as you'll get without going onto the track, isn't it? It's more than just a game in a sense.
It's a simulation. Absolutely a simulation. I apologise, AK, and Kunos for getting that one wrong. There is so much data that Kunos Simulazioni have inputted into this platform to allow it to act as close to the real world as they possibly can, especially Pirelli tyre data. That is one of the most huge influences on any form of motorsport, the black round things that they stick on the rims of the tyres. And in the game, therefore, it is so very, very important. And Pirelli have worked so hard, been so generous with their time, with Kunos, who is the developer of this platform, to make sure that it feels as close as they possibly can to real life.
And go back to Monza when we started the championship on site in 21, pole position real race, pole position esports race. The difference of the laps was a tenth of a second.
Yes.
That's how close it was.
Yeah.
A better advert for the relevance of this you could not wish to have. So we're getting ready then, not only for our last race, but for our triple championship showdown. Pro, gold and silver, all on the line this evening. We've touched on what happens in Pro. As far as the other categories are concerned, we've got the fight going on in the Gold Championship, where it is Team WRT, the car driven tonight by Callum Williams, 2 points ahead of Marius Zug, who in turn is 5 ahead of Nicholas Bart. So it's really between Callum Williams and Marius Zug within gold. And in silver, 2 points between Cesar Gazo for Boots and VDS and Alexei Nesov for Mad Panda Motorsport. And then 3 back, Alex Arca, who is, again, rapid like they all are really these days in real as well as esports racing. So those other 2 classes, ultra competitive.
Alex Arca, a previous champion in class in this sim racing world, and a multiple winner. I haven't got the stats as to how many he's won, but this year hasn't been the same kind of level that we saw from Alex last year. If he wins the race, then he will draw on points with Boots and VDS if they score nothing. But he would have more wins and so could find himself in championship contention. There is Alex, who hasn't really found as much time to dedicate to practicing. They do get 3 hours in the Fanatec Arena to be able to practice. And at the end of that 3 hours, they get a 10-minute window to do their qualifying lap. Slightly different to how we used to do it. We used to have a separate qualifying before the race. But actually, that works really nicely now. It means that they come into here. They've just been at driver's briefing. And they go straight into race conditions. Now, we should have gone racing by this point, just to let you know that somebody decided to pull the plug just before we went on air. So all the sims are back up and running now, and the drivers are all getting every setting ready, because, of course, they've gone in. When you unplug a computer, it doesn't save any of the settings. So they've had to get the steering wheel settings and everything back in. You know when you've been writing that big, long document, and then the power runs out on your laptop and it all goes? It's the same inside a platform. So.
Right, fine. So we're getting there.
We're nearly there, yeah.
Bit by bit, all the servers and all the rigs reconnect, and then we are going to be in business very shortly. Good to have so many people here within the Fanatec Arena. And wherever you're watching, welcome to what promises to be a very lively way to end the championship. Now, of course, there's also, not only do we touch on the data that Pirelli provide and the different manufacturers of a GT3 car provide, but then you also factor in effectively success ballast. So there's extra weight for the top 3 from last time out, and that, again, Sandy Mitchell carrying an extra 20 kilos, he has to factor that into the way he sets up the virtual car. And clearly, it has been struggling a little bit because of where he is on the grid.
Well, yeah, look at the Lamborghini performance in general. Much like in the real world, there's a BOP, a balance of performance, to make sure that all the models are as equal as possible, both in this and on the online series, and all of the various races that you can do on Assetto Corsa Competizione. But then you add an extra 20 kilos of success ballast, and it changes the game completely. So Crestani has the pole position. That's the first time we've seen Crestani at that level for Lamborghini. But Sandy Mitchell, 0.6 of a second behind, and you can attribute most of that to the 20 kilos that he's carrying. Interestingly, though, Callum Williams has 20 kilos on his BMW. He's second on the grid. So that BMW, obviously a very strong car if it was fully light, and there are other cars, BMWs in the field that are lighter, but not as high as Callum Williams has managed in qualifying.
Well, very shortly, we are going to get things underway. Apologies for the delay. The teams, the drivers, eager to get on with sorting out champions, and little by little, we are getting closer then to getting this final round underway. Picking a winner out of this is going to be very difficult indeed, because it is such a jumbled grid. Ben's touched on the fact that Fabrizio Crestani is on pole for the first time. Callum Williams second on the grid, and then you've got Lauren Heinrich ahead of Adam Eteki. So silver, gold, pro, gold for the top four. Silver fifth, Alex Arca, and pro sixth, Nicholas Nielsen. But then there are other people like Alexei Nesov for the Mad Panda team, seventh on the grid. Charlie Fagg for Optimum Motorsport, again out of gold, seventh and eighth on the grid. And those are two very quick drivers, and they've been up the front in previous esports races.
Yeah, Fagg especially. The McLaren, not necessarily the favoured car, but over the last couple of events, Charlie Fagg has really shown that he can pedal that car at the very sharp end of the field. And actually, shout out to Nicholas Kiergaard as well, 10th position on the grid. He's a man that came in 3 years ago to this and fell off at every occasion, and he's now mid-grid and right in the thick of things. So another chance then to go through the grid and have a look at the various different cars. Crestani, Williams, and then Heinrich for the Rutronic on the left-hand side. We've got Adam Eteki for Boots and VDS in the number 9 on the right-hand side.
And further back down the grid, number 99 is Alex Arca then. Pole position, the faster line, if you like, is on the inside, which is the grippier line. On the outside line there, number 51 is Nicholas Nielsen. So remember, it's Crestani and Williams the front row, Heinrich and Eteki the second, Arca Nielsen the third row. The fourth row, number 90, the Mad Panda Motorsport Mercedes AMG of Alexei Nesov. Then the charismatically coloured McLaren, Charlie Fagg at the wheel of it. Then Ayenchen Guven, Porsche specialist, and one to watch, Nikolai Kiergaard in that Gulf liveried McLaren, whether it's real or virtual. Gulf colours look good. Next on the grid, Dan Harper, who's a star for BMW in no matter what you put him in, whether it's World Challenge, Esports, British GT, you name it. Then Jordan Pepper just over our shoulder here in the arena. Sandy Mitchell starting next with Cesar Gerzo for company. Gilles Magnus in the Audi, the blue and yellow car, is 15th on the grid. Pierre-Louis Chauvet is next. Marius Zug in the Winward Racing Mercedes AMG. He's quite a long way back, bearing in mind he's second in gold in the championship. He's got work to do. Thomas Drouet comes next, then Daniele Diamato in the Dynamic GT Huber Racing Porsche. Then Charles Weerts, winner in the sprint in the real world at Valencia 2 weeks ago. Sam de Jonge is next, ahead of Christopher Mies with the blue Audi. Then there is Nicholas Bart and Paul Everard 24th, and therefore it looks like we are missing Romain Leroux, Ricardo Feller and Mauro Engel. They're not evident at the back of the grid. But even so, there is enough on that grid to give us a really good race.
Yeah, it's interesting that Mauro Engel actually did set a qualifying time. Another driver that's really struggled, you know, one of the best, most professional real-world drivers there is, but in the virtual world, something doesn't quite click. And there is a different way of driving these things. It is like jumping into a totally different machine. And for Mauro Engel, been on the entry list throughout the season, but unfortunately not with us this season. Romain Leroux was actually at least in contention during his qualifying session, so a shame to not have the 25th car on the grid.
Yeah, the other one we don't have, because presumably there is representation elsewhere, is a number 88 Marciello or Boguslavski or Gunon entry from Acodis ASP.
Because you, as a team, you only need to enter one driver into the sim racing world, and that's been Thomas Drouet for them this year. Because at Acodis ASP, I remember talking to them back in Spa, and they wanted to very much focus the real drivers on the real, and find one that they could use to compromise here and not distract the Marcellos of this world. Yeah. He was so good when he was here, but that's been the kind of mentality from the Acodis ASP team, and that's why Thomas Drouet has been with us and actually only scored a single point across the season. Only 1 point, therefore, that's been contributed to their real world.
So good plan in execution hasn't turned out quite as expected. We are 1 minute to go then before the cars are released. It'll be an opportunity to have a look at the Barcelona circuit. The way that the software is set, hesitate to say game, is for bright sunny conditions, and it is just after 2 o'clock local time within the settings for the race. So it's a dry circuit, it'll be a fast circuit, and interesting to see when the teams make that strategy call of bringing people into the pit lane, because just like in the real world, you can gain or you can lose depending on when you make a pit stop and how good it is.
All you need to do is put a single litre of fuel into the car to register it as a pit stop. You don't need to change tyres, and you don't need to fuel it any longer, because there's enough fuel in the car for the full hour race. Interestingly though, talking to some of the drivers, they do need to save their tyres. They cannot do a full hour's race flat out, because they will wear their tyres out to a point where they'll fall off a cliff at the end of the race. So how you treat your tyres in the early part of the stint really impacts how you will finish the race.
And the compromise of, if you like, nursing them isn't as bad as wasting time doing a tyre change.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
So there is that to factor in as well. As then a virtual green flag is shown, and the cars then headed away with some zealotry by Fabrizio Crestani are in business. This pit straight is a very, very long pit straight indeed. And then you make the run down through turns 1 and 2, which is that right-left, and turn 3, long uphill, arcing right-hander. And you start to run out of puff 2/3 of the way around that corner if you're on foot. But then, of course, it starts to plateau a little bit, and there is a bit more undulation to this circuit than perhaps people give it credit for.
David's done his track walk this evening, although at some pace already.
Yes, it was a jog more than a walk, but yes, I've been around it, and it's amazing how gravelly it is in the real world from the last practice session, people having run off the road. And again, that's something that would have been factored into the software here as well. If people abuse track limits, if they cut the curb, if they run onto the dirt, the runoff areas, they'll bring some of that rubbish back onto the circuit, and that's another hazard, just as it will be in the race here on Sunday afternoon in the real world.
And you'll see that graphically represented, that the outside of these corners, this is turn 4 now, that will start building up the marbles, but building up the slight grey, dark look around the outside of the corner here, and again down at turn 5. And more, as the race progresses, it becomes more dangerous to run offline and pick that stuff up on your tyre. Because also, once you overheat the tyre, it's very hard to bring it back into a window. All tyres have a window of operation. And if you overheat, then you really have to back off and be calm with the tyre to make sure that it comes back to where you want it to be, so you then get the lap time and you get the grip again. It's a fine balancing act.
Interesting as well that, of course, in a virtual race like this, we don't have a pace car for the formation lap, so it's down to Fabrizio Crestani to control the pace. And he absolutely went storming away, didn't he, at the start of this formation lap. So as he comes then now down towards turn 10, starting to back them up, ready to get them into that 2x2 Noah's Ark formation, and then very shortly we will be in business. So a little bit later than anticipated, but the race shortly to get underway. And the way that Crestani went in that qualifying session was impressive, because he took pole over Callum Williams. It was a silver ahead of gold. But just to illustrate how competitive esports GT3 racing is, just like in the real world with a balance of performance, the margin between those two front row drivers, Fabrizio Crestani and Callum Williams, 3/1000ths of a second. 3/1000ths of a second, the margin between the top two on the grid. In other words, this is going to be close.
I don't really know how you measure that. Apparently, Callum was up 0.2 of a second in the middle of the lap, so he lost it in the second half, bouncing over these curbs. Now, some cars, some brands will be able to take these curbs very aggressively. The likes of the Lamborghini probably will not, because it will run lower and you'll scuff the bottom of the car, you'll lose control. The big BMW perhaps would be higher off the ground, and maybe you can ride the curbs a bit more aggressively. Here they are then, coming round the final turn. That's no different to the real world. In 2023. They'll line up side by side in formation, although Crestani is trying to give the rest of the grid a bit of a hurry up, and has quite an advantage as we go green flag racing for the final time in 2023, and he leads down towards turn 1 with Callum Williams trying to get his slipstream. Lauren Heinrich in the Retronic coloured Porsche in third position, but he's got cars to his outside, and sometimes you can sweep around the outside, which is exactly what Cesar Gazzo has done. Callum Williams has run off the road though. He's lost a position, and it's Rutronic up to second spot.
But Williams got a tap in the back, didn't he, from Adam Ateki? It was all very tight going into turn 1. There was another car off the road between 1 and 2. So Fabrizio Crestani trying to make good his escape. There's more mayhem at the back of the pack. I think we've got involved in all of that, possibly Jordan Pepper or Sandy Mitchell, conceivably. It's Sandy Mitchell, isn't it, who's fallen right back. So Sandy Mitchell in real strife then, the man that's second in the championship. He's got caught up in the dramas right at the start, and of course in this there's no chance, there's no need for a safety car. So a gap opens up, the gap stays.
And we also have Marius Zug in there, and he's in contention for the championship in gold. So that's 2 championship contenders at the tail of the field. Thomas Drouet also in there, and they're having themselves a nice little battle, but they actually just need to get their heads down and close the gap, because there will not be a safety car to help them out in this one. It is an option, but we're not having it.
Right, so at the moment then, it is Fabrizio Crestani trying to get away, and Callum Williams, as you can see, down in third place, trying to regroup, but there was a little bit of contact, and there's a bit more going on further down the order as well, as in the middle of all this is Dan Harper. He's up the curb, he's got Nicolas Giergaard behind him. In number 11 Audi is Gilles Magnus, who we know is good whether it's in a GT car or a TCR car or in esports, and he's cracking on with the job, although he goes a bit wide, dropping down towards the chicane there.
Got to recalibrate their brains. They've been out in free practice this evening in their GT3 real cars, and now they've got to remember they've got to hard on the brakes into that chicane and how to get the best through it. One thing you can do in the virtual world that you can't do in the real is you can monster the curbs. You don't have to worry too much about braking suspension. Down the inside, that's a nice move from Adam Ateki. Does he get it done? Because Alexei Nesov tries to fight back and loses the rear end, and it's done, but round the outside comes Nicholas Nielsen in the sole Ferrari.
But Nielsen's going to get hung out to dry there. Alexei Nesov has recovered from that little skirmish. He's got the inside line now on the run up towards turn 4. Nielsen is still on the outside, under attack from Charlie Fagg as well. And then you've got Jordan Pepper's Lamborghini in the mix as well. So all of that now means that Nicholas Nielsen is the man on the defensive rather than attacking, because he's got Charlie Fagg up the inside there.
God, the cars look so skittish in these early laps, don't they? Not quite up to temperature with their brakes and their tyres, and it just looks a bit of a handful to make sure the car's facing in the right direction. We're right on board with Alexei Nesov, who is on our inset as well. So used to seeing Esquel Perez Compact, the team manager, the team owner of Mad Panda over the last couple of years, but they decided to put their faith in Alexei Nesov, who is a proven sim racing driver, actually a member of the Redline team, which is so synonymous with sim racing as a whole, has a certain Max Verstappen as their team leader at Redline Racing. And they were really around almost before sim racing was around, was Team Redline, supporting the very best juniors and world-class races in the sim racing world when they're not here in the real.
And Mad Panda based just outside the Barcelona circuit, so very much a home race for the Mad Panda Motorsport team, although, as you say, the owner, Ezequiel Perez Companc, is from the Argentine. It is a Spanish-based team. Right, 2 laps are in the book then as the leaders go through. Crestani 6/10 up on Lauren Heinrich, who can just sit there now for the bulk of the hour, can't he? Because the championship is his if he stays ahead of Sandy Mitchell. So it's job done at the moment in pro for Lauren Heinrich, as long as he basically keeps out of strife and hangs on to the points.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was very unlikely that Sandy would be able to do anything. Alex Acker, though, in 13th position, getting back underway from turn 2, but his campaign for championship victory in silver will have been slightly jolted by that. He's going to drop down the field to 17th spot as we now watch Dan Harper in the BMW Bank machine, previously BMW Junior. All 3 of those juniors becoming proper full factory drivers and driving for Rover Racing, but with BMW Bank colours.
Now Crestani has done the fastest lap of the race. He's trying to edge away, and the margin is up to 9/10 now over Lauren Heinrich. As under attack there, look, Gilles Magnus, because he has still got Dan Harper right behind him. This is for 10th and 11th places then. The Audi just ahead of the BMW as they drop down to the hairpin. Now Dan Harper can see an opportunity maybe on the inside. Is he close enough? He's going to have a go. Full send up the inside. Dan Harper breaks late and he's gone by. Good move. Dan Harper has done it. That's 10th.
Now, usually in the Fanatec Arena, we get a nice big round of applause for moves like that, but they're obviously feeling a little bit shy this evening here in Barcelona.
Well, I thought it was a good move, and Dan Harper deserved that. That was a bold effort up the inside. Now, look, Nicholas Nielsen shaking off Charlie Fagg, who in turn has got Jordan Pepper behind him, and Cesar Gazo is next in the queue. But in terms of class positions, that puts Cesar Gazo in third in gold, and he needs to be doing a little bit better than that in terms of points, doesn't he?
Yeah, at the moment, really, championships as it was coming into this weekend, such as the performance of our various drivers, there's not going to be too much of a change, with Callan Williams up there leading the pro category, just ahead of Adam Ateki. Here's a replay of the start. What happened in the middle of the pack? There was already a kiss between Alexei Nesov and Nicholas Nielsen almost before they got to the start line.
But then have a look at the Audi just tagging the back of Callan Williams then for second place. That's what forced Williams wide, and then it got very messy in the mid-pack. That's where Sandy Mitchell was forced out wide. There's another Lamborghini in the walls. Mitchell sideways, others spear off the road. So usual thing in the mid-pack. Everyone goes for the same bit of real estate. Some win, some lose. And
it wasn't really one individual incident, wasn't it? It was about 3 or 4 as the tyres are cold. Quite a slow warm-up lap, and I wonder whether they just hadn't got operating temperature up. And so first couple of turns a bit tricky. Alex Acker moving back up through the field. That was an easy one past Nicolas Bart, who's done a very good job for Come To You Racing this year. The team owned by his father, considering they really didn't have very much experience, well, of GT3 racing as a whole, but they've been learning throughout the year, and Nicholas just holding on as chaos has surrounded him this year in the Fanatec Arena, and got a decent haul of points by the end of the year. Third in the championship right now. That is the car that leads gold in the real world.
Nicholas Nielsen is being given a 5-second penalty for causing a collision. So he's running 6th on the road, number 51 Ferrari, but causing a collision on the first lap of the race with number 99 Alex Arca. So Nicholas Nielsen will have this penalty to serve. You're riding at the moment with Gilles Magnus then, who is down to 11th. The Audi trying to come back at the BMW as they charge down towards turn 1, and he's closing, under braking. BMW up the curb, so all of that effort from Gilles Magnus gets him close, but then the grunt of the BMW, I think, is going to power it away. Dan Harper, though, in the meantime, look, on the back of Charlie Fagg, who's on the back of Cesar Gazo. Good battle pack developing here. So up towards turn 4 they come. Look back from Charlie Fagg's McLaren. Dan Harper is right there behind now, so 9th and 10th, nose to tail.
Just trying to remember who scored the points for Come To You Racing in that pro entry, because we've had Gilles Magnus in the car, but we also, last time out, had Kobe Parmels, the Belgian driver, making a guest entry into GT3 racing as a whole, and got thrown into the sim as well, with very little experience, but he had done a week's worth of practice beforehand. He was actually not the scorer. I thought he was the scorer, but Gilles at the Spa 24 Hours picked up 2 points in the pro category. So there's the 2 sole points for the Come To You Racing pro entry. And then because they're in a different class as well in the real world, they have to also enter a gold car, and they have a silver car. So they've got 3 cars in this.
Now Charlie Fagg, you can see hard at work, but externally, he's under massive pressure from Dan Harper. The BMW has a little bit of a twitch as he applies the power at the top of the hill. Drop down now towards the chicane. So stand on the brakes, go left, go right. You can, if you're really, really bold, have a go to pass there, but much of the time it's perhaps better not to risk anything and set up the move for the pit straight. But actually the McLaren, with its aero-friendly shape, gets away a little bit from the BMW there as they head over the timing line. So Charlie Fagg for the moment is 0.4 of a second up on Dan Harper, and then behind you've got Gilles Magnus, who was so good on the brakes down here a lap ago. Further back, Sandy Mitchell is on a mission as he tries to fight his way back up through the order. Over the line he goes. That is the Audi of Paul Everard up the road, but this is 22nd and 23rd.
I hadn't noticed that Ayçen Guven's down there as well. So one of the other Porsche Works drivers. Oh, that's very wide from Chauvet. That's surely going to invite Mitchell around the outside, and it does. So that's a nice easy move in the end. But Guven is, yes, applause. Well done, audience. Guven, one of the best sim racers in the field here as a pro Porsche driver, but at the very back of the field. So he's obviously got caught in strife somewhere.
Yeah, he was another casualty on the opening lap, struggling to make the progress. Quite right. So Guven, in fact, has just gone further and further back as Harper nearly gets into the tail of Charlie Fagg there, helping him along up the hill. So you can see the way that this works out. The McLaren has its strengths at certain parts of the circuit, then the BMW has elsewhere. On the subject of BMW, Charles Weerts now, penalty, 5 seconds, causing a collision. Dan Harper up the curb, Dan Harper gets all sideways and loses out. He tried to gain and he's lost out.
I love sim racing from being able to see the facial reactions of the drivers. Dan was not happy with himself there. It was a little bit of a last gasp attempt, wasn't it? He wasn't really close enough, but there was then half a door open, stuck the nose in, but had to hold the brake so long that the car rotated on him. And we saw exactly how he felt, didn't we, with his facial expressions that, of course, in the real world, you would never see.
Yes, nothing was left to our imagination there, was it, as Charles Weerts then comes through. Remember, he's another one that's got a penalty. And this is Alex Arca in replay. Earlier dramas coming into turn 1, looking to get past Nikolai Kjærgaard, and round the outside, bit of contact maybe, and around he went.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Christopher Mies, we just saw briefly, he's trying to go around the outside, which is the inside for with Charles Weerts, but that hasn't worked. He's lost the rear end of the car. He's now going to lose a position to Alex Arca. So Arca comes through. This is rather entertaining stuff, isn't it, from Barcelona? Beautiful day for racing, everything working out, and lots of cars out of position.
I was going to say, that's one of the beauties, that you have got, partly from qualifying, partly from the first lap, people where they should not be and are trying to fight a way through or hang on to a position. Dan Harper, a lap ago, was on his toes looking to gain ground. Right now, he's having to make that the world's widest BMW to keep people at bay.
Yeah, and Dan is the one car that doesn't have the weight penalty. Callum Williams in the WRT entry, with the success from last round, is carrying more weight than Dan Harper. They both have the same factory support from BMW, the help to get the cars set up correctly. A lot of the time, as we've heard across the year, the Sim Racing Pro, a lot of them who are here this weekend to go racing tomorrow for the Sim Racing Series, will just give these guys a setup and tell them to drive around it because it will be fast once you can cope with it. It's completely changed from year 1 and 2, where these guys would come in and try and set the car up like they would do in the real world and be a little bit lost.
But it's fascinating, isn't it, that real world drivers are being told what to do by virtual racers. But in this discipline, their experience counts a great deal. Now, Fabrizio Crestani is still the race leader, and he has still done the fastest lap of the race, a 1:44.2. But the margin now is very nearly 3 seconds, so he's absolutely head down and charging. Lauren Heinrich, of course, running second, but more importantly then, leading his class. So he's on for a class win, he's on for a championship.
Yeah, very much so. No real challenge for him in the pro category. Crestani's a bit of a surprise for me. He has taken a victory this year, but in class, never been this high up the field. Oh, Nicholas Nielsen throwing it up the inside of turn 5, and luckily Alexei Nesov saw that happening. They're still side by side, though. It's not quite done, although the circuit does turn left, and Nielsen claims it.
Oh, but not for long. Got a helping hand from Nesov. Off he goes. So Nicholas Nielsen gains the place, gets a tap through the gravel. He's back on the road, but he's lost another spot as well in all of that, because now Jordan Pepper is ahead of him. And to add insult to injury, of course, Nielsen's got a 5-second penalty anyway hanging over him.
Yeah, and there's going to be more, isn't there, being handed out after that. Too much contact from Nesov. Race controllers in lap 3 now, so at least they're only a couple of laps behind. We're on lap 7, by the way. And race control live in this world, there's a couple of laps behind.
But that's because there's a lot to sort out.
There's a lot to sort out, yeah.
So Nicholas Nielsen, the innocent party in all of that, but again it shows just how close they were. I don't think Nesov did it deliberately. He was trying to turn in and there just wasn't quite the room. The Ferrari wasn't as far ahead as he thought it might be. Brushed the back, and because they're on the edge, that was enough to unsettle Nielsen's Ferrari.
Yeah, the physics on the platform of driving close to another car does seem to emphasize if there is what you would expect to be a little tap suddenly becomes a massive tap, and it slightly overemphasizes contact when you're driving really, really close. And in the real world, it would be a rub, but for some reason on this, it becomes more of a spring effect. Here comes Alex Arca down the inside of Charles Weerts. He claims the apex nice and early and gets that move done. So moves himself up into 13th position, but third in class and a long way away from Alexei Nesov, who leads that particular class.
But Alex Arca and we've said this before, he's got the right attitude to esports. Just because he's had a moment earlier on, he doesn't bail, does he? He carries on in the game, carries on in the race, tries to salvage what he can. We've seen repeatedly people getting roughed up early on and then disconnecting, giving up on it, but Alex Arca perseveres. Christopher Mies is another one. He didn't qualify well, but he's starting to chip away as the race unwinds, and he's now running in 15th place. He's on the back of Charles Weerts, so you've got two real GT3 stars here. Audi driver chasing former Audi driver, and ahead of the pair is Alex Arca in 13th place. At the back of that queue is Daniele Diamato in the green Porsche, and we've had pretty much now the first 15 minutes of racing. And as race control cycle through all the dramas, a number of these incidents are purely racing incidents, no action needing to be taken.
There's Christopher Mies on the inset, concentrating. Not necessarily a name you would associate so much with the sim racing world. So many of these guys you will see crop up in sim racing around the world on a weekly basis. Christopher Mies not one of those, but it's good to see that kind of a name being brought into the Fanatec Arena this year and taking it seriously and improving with every round. And that's what we're seeing across the board, you know. Gone are the days where after a couple of laps we'd only have half the field left because everyone was left. We've lost one car. Ayhan Guven has decided, and probably quite rightly, with the most competitive field that there is, that he's not going to score points, and so he's off to have a beer for this evening, or probably not, probably water. But outside of that, 23 cars still run.
Alex Arca, in the meantime, is pushing on. Did a personal best lap last time. Fabrizio Crestani did another outright best lap. He's 4 seconds to the good. But I think in a way, he's being flattered a little bit by Lauren Heinrich not having to go after him because he's a comfortable class leader. And Callum Williams third, likewise. His target is to stay ahead of Adam Ateki, isn't he? Third and fourth, those two. And Alexei Nesov is tumbling down the order in the Mad Panda Mercedes. So number 90 has had a moment somewhere. So is Alex Arca going to come across in a moment the struggling Mercedes? Let's see.
Well, he's only just now up the road, 3.5 seconds. Yeah. Cesar Gazou looks down the inside of Charlie Fagg, has the space, has the apex, nice move into turn number 10. Fagg's going to try and come back at him, but the circuit goes right. Oh, wow, Fagg, nice work. Huge amount of commitment to go all the way around the outside there, but he's made it stick.
Really brave stuff, and it worked. He was given racing room, but didn't put a wheel wrong, did he? So Charlie Fagg goes through. Next target, Nicholas Nielsen. Nielsen, in turn, is on the back of Jordan Pepper. So this is the queue, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And right now, Charlie Fagg is a man on a mission. He's running third in the Gold Cup, heads over the line, and let's see what he can do in terms of a lap time. That was a 45.9. So straight away, Charlie Fagg lapping quicker than Nicholas Nielsen. Nicholas is a bit stuck behind the Lamborghini of Pepper.
That's big news for Nesov dropping down, because he was ahead of Cesar Gazou, and in the silver class, that could have been enough, depending on where Gazou dropped down to, for that championship to change. But now, Nesov behind Gazou, down in 12th position, 3.2 seconds ahead of Alex Arca. We will find out in a few moments' time. Here it is, and he's been caught. It's just a little bit of contact there from the 63, which is Sandy Mitchell. No, Jordan Pepper up in 5th.
Oh dear, so Pepper assault. Anyway, Jordan Pepper survives, but Alexei Nesov down in 12th place, so he'll try and fight back from that if he can, but it's going to be a big ask. Jordan Pepper, I don't think, picked up any damage, but just at the moment, he certainly can't get away from Nicholas Nielsen. Now, just changing tack for a moment, that 5-second penalty, does that get added on at the end, or does he have to serve that in the pit stop? No,
it'll be automatically served by the platform in the pit stop, so he'll just be held an extra 5 seconds. If then he doesn't do that, then the game will add it on at the end. And we will know when the pit stops have been served, because that little orange number 1 turns to green when they have completed their stop, and that also is a way for us to know if the stop was legal as well. We've had a few occasions this year where it hasn't, the game seems to not register the pit stops, either from something that the drivers are doing or from a glitch, but it's not quite clear what exactly is going on. Nesov now tucked under the rear wing of Nikola Kiergaard through the final turn, and recovery drive is on.
Yeah, now that Mercedes has got a lot of grunt around here, and this section of the circuit, this long drag past the pit, absolutely ideal for that front engine Mercedes AMG. Looking at Nesov at work then as he comes down towards turn 1, sets the car up. He's not close enough to make a move there. He's up the curb at 2, aims it for the clipping point at turn 3. Has to fight it as he runs in the dirty air of that McLaren though. And look how much energy is being put into keeping that Mercedes anywhere near an apex. And he drifts wide again.
I love this view because it gives you so much more information as to what the drivers are seeing. They have this graphic representation, which is on that right-hand side of the screen, of what the tyres are going through. And visually, when they're stamping on the brakes, how the tyre changes its temperature. So green is good on the right-hand side, but I'd say he's working them pretty hard on those lefts. The yellow colour, and then on the inside of that actually is also the brakes. So if you've got the wrong blanking on your brake, because you're able to cover the brake cooling systems to get them up to temperature better, and if you've got that wrong, then you'll see those brakes turn to red and then they will eventually go pop. But you've got the gears and you've got the traction control, and you can see what settings, what map, fuel map, what ABS is being used. He locks up into turn 10. The rear's just locking up a little bit, and I'd say that Mercedes is not particularly easy to drive.
It's a handful, certainly, isn't it? And again, the effort being put in by Alexei Nesov is impressive, but actually, over the course of a lap, all he's doing is wearing his tyres, working them harder, taking a bit of life out, and it's a real struggle to stay on the back of that McLaren, whereas Charlie Fagg's McLaren is right on the back of Nicholas Nielsen's Ferrari, which in turn is right on the tail of Jordan Pepper's Lamborghini. 5th, 6th, 7th, they come over the line. Charlie Fagg is close enough to make a move. Nielsen defends. Charlie goes to the outside line. Nielsen lines up for a big, big, big dive on the inside. He goes through and there's contact. He's up the curb. There's a lot of applause for the move, but I don't necessarily think it was without an exchange of paint.
I think it just was very, very brave. All cars facing the right direction still. And he just kind of breezed off the brakes to allow him down the inside. Now the Lamborghini of Jordan Pepper feigns a look, or maybe it's a defense from Charlie Fagg. Either way, look who's coming to the party. They're so slow that Cesar Gazoo and Dan Harper are going to make this a 5-car train in, well, now.
On board with Charlie Fagg, you're in 7th place, you're 3rd in class, and Jordan Pepper's Pro Cup Lamborghini is ahead. Drop down the hill then, ride the curb, and this is quite a steep climb out of that little S. Uphill, uphill, uphill. Then you go right, fire it in, over the rise, over the crest, and then drop down to the hairpin. And this is another overtaking opportunity if you're close enough, and Charlie Fagg is not quite near enough, but he is good on the brakes and gets right onto the tail of the Lambo.
You can see Charlie looking to his left-hand side. That's him looking to see if that car behind is going to make a move. He's very, very close to him, and that wraparound screen gives him as much vision as he'd have in the real world.
Jordan Pepper, 5-second penalty for causing a collision, and also being given a penalty now for an unsafe rejoin, Pierre-Louis Chauvet. But Nielsen penalty, Pepper penalty, then Fagg, no penalty.
No, and Charlie Fagg's going to be promoted up to 5th position overall, 3rd in class, but unfortunately 5.5 back from his nearest rival. Now looks to the inside on Jordan Pepper, coming to the braking zone at turn 1. You really need to be fully alongside and committed, and he's done that and shuts the door at turn 2. Lovely move from Charlie Fagg.
Very nicely done indeed. Jordan Pepper gets a face full of the Optimum McLaren. So Charlie Fagg, who has of course been a real star a few years back in GT4 racing, mightily impressive in GT3 McLarens, whether it's been in esports or the real world. Remember how well that car went, Charlie in particular, in the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa back in the summer. Well, right now he is 6th, which is really 5th because he's going to gain another place, except he gets in the back of Nielsen. He hits him again. Pepper goes through, Gazzo goes through, and having said that Charlie Fagg was unpenalised, I rather fear that there's one in the post now.
And again, just being caught a little bit by the car in front, braking harder than you. So easy to do. Dan Harper slots ahead of Charlie Fagg. And again, there's 3 different races here. We're talking about the overall, and they are sharing the same track, but he didn't need to make that move because ultimately Jordan Pepper and Nicholas Nielsen were in a separate race.
So now Dan Harper gaining another place. He's up into 7th. And his has been a bit of a seesaw kind of a race, hasn't it? Up and down the order, but Dan Harper still pushing on. And he comes out of the chicane. There is Charlie Fagg then on the tail of the BMW down towards the end of the lap. They come. And let's have, in a moment, a look at other dramas from one or two other drivers that have been in the wars over the course of the race. But here you've got the battle between Harper and Fag over the timing line. Race leaders have gone through, 14 laps done, and that, I think, is Nicholas Nielsen out of the car, out of the race. So that is the Ferrari driver done. He's had a penalty, he's been turned around, there is now no point.
That's very annoying, that's very frustrating, but actually in that pro class we do have so many competitors that if you are turned around like that, you're not going to be picking up points. And Nielsen, who has had so many points over the 3 years, he's been the sole Ferrari flag flyer, was unlucky here, really, really unlucky, and Fag is going to get a penalty for it, but he didn't mean to.
No. And then there was the secondary contact, and you can see why Nicholas Nielsen has decided that there is no point persevering. He's not going to score and can't affect the championship anyway. So the Ferrari is out. Charlie Fag continues, and we await news as to whether there might be a penalty. There is a time penalty coming now for Daniele Diamato for causing a collision. So a number of them are getting into hot water. And now a 10-second time penalty for Sandy Mitchell for causing a collision.
Wow, there's quite a few to serve when they go into the pits, isn't it? The window is now open. They've got 10 minutes to serve their penalty. And I think for somebody like Alexei Nesov here, sitting right in the middle of the pack, or indeed Alex Acker, get into the pits and get yourself some clear air. Thomas Drouet has already done that.
Yeah, indeed. A clarification, not Sandy Mitchell, Jordan Pepper. He'd already copped one, he's now copped another. So 10 seconds in total for an incident. And Charlie Fag is getting a penalty now by the look of it, because he has got 10 seconds next to his name on that graphic. So Charlie Fag gets a penalty. That is Dan Harper hurtling down the pit lane, pursued by Charlie Fag. Now, hopefully the simulation will accept that penalty and apply it for Charlie Fag now. He'd hate to have it post-race.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting to see how many cars are coming in this early. Yeah. Now, very important, you can't see the box, but the driver can see a box that he needs to park in. If he's too forward of that, too back from that, then the pit stop, which should be very quick, the car should instantly jump up on the jack and drop back down again, and off you go. If you're not in the box, then it will make it longer. And whilst today, perhaps the battling on track is dictating what's going on, tomorrow when we have the sim racing guys, the real sim pros get into the cars, that will be the difference between winning and losing.
So right now, it is Fabrizio Crestani, the leader, by 8.3 seconds. Now, bearing in mind they were 3 thousandths apart in qualifying, 8.3 and growing is quite a margin. And he's done the fastest lap of the race, and we've done now 15 laps.
We can ride on board with him, over his shoulder, looking at exactly what he can see. As the traction control kicks in, that flashes. As the ABS kicks in, he's set it for 4. And you obviously can change how much the ABS and traction control interfere with your driving. He's on a pretty safe setting there with 4 for both. But it is being utilised quite a lot. That's why it flashes every time he gets on the brakes and on the power.
Alexei Nesov, in the meantime, trying to get himself back up the order, and he is on the tail of Nikolai Sjiergaard here. So this is 7th and 8th, and the Mercedes are going to have a very, very bold go, and it works. Elbows out, hit again. You did it to me, I'll do it to you. So Sjiergaard was given a biff, and he biffs back, and he retakes the place. That might get looked at, but in the end, it was the same order coming out of the chicane as it was going in.
He's got the momentum though, hasn't he? Down the main straight, under the rear wing, should pick up nicer slipstream. Just about now, the effect. Maybe might have to blend out of the throttle to avoid contact. Tries to go around the outside at turn 1. Very rarely can you do this unless you're fully alongside for turn 2. Claims the apex, forces him wide. What a lovely move from Alexei Nesov.
A lot of applause for that, deservedly so. I think that's the biggest cheer of the night. So Alexei Nesov fighting back. That puts him back up into 7th. It puts him 3rd in class still. And now let's see whether he can get away from Sjiergaard. So Alexei Nesov, who's always looked good in this all season, pressing on, and you can see the pace straight away. He's cleared that McLaren, he's building a gap.
Yeah, and he's looking in the bottom left hand of his screen to see exactly what kind of pace he's able to do. Does still need to pit though.
Yeah.
Might want to leave it now he's got clear air, because just get your head down and go. Whilst he was stuck underneath the rear wing of that car, maybe get out of it and go into the pits. But you also got to remember, once you've pitted, where are you going to fall into line? And there'll be other guys watching this in-game to work out, once you've pitted, are you going to be in traffic or are you going to have clear air?
Now, the best of the stoppers is Dan Harper from Alex Arca and then Charlie Fag. Now, That clears Charlie's penalty. We'll see where they are relative to Crestani and Heinrich and Williams and Eteki and others once all the pit stops have cycled through. But if Dan Harper is in clear air, he ought to be able to make some progress.
Yeah,
but there's your answer. He's not. He's got Paul Everard ahead of him, who has yet to pit. So he's being compromised now. The way he's been released, it is into traffic, except Everard goes off the road, demolishes the board, and that's really helped Dan Harper because now the road is clear. Now he can push qualifying style.
It was almost a kind of breathe in and hope that car doesn't come spinning across the road in front of him. Luckily, Paul Everard was able to hold on. He's got to do 2 pit stops, by the way, because he's got stop-go penalty. That's what SG stands for on the graphic. So he's got to do 1 to do his compulsory pit stop and then another 1 afterwards.
9 seconds now, the leading margin between Crestani and Heinrich. Alexei Nesov in 7th place, and he is pushing on to try and get onto terms next with Cesar Gazo, who's quite a bit up the road now. He's got to make up a good 6 seconds or so before he can think about another place gained, and we are now into the second half of the race, aren't we? So the pit window remains open. We've just nudged after half distance, and Fabrizio Crestani is the leader. Daniele Diamato, who got a penalty earlier on, he serves his regulation stop and now makes his way down the pit lane.
Not seen too much of Diamato on our broadcast. Nice to have him with us. I think is in the silver category, for which, according to we haven't seen that car in the silver category before, so it's a new entry.
Okay.
I think that's right. Oh, no, it's not. I'm completely...
No, he's 4th in the standings.
It's the printer that failed. It's
yes.
under that bit.
Right. 4th, but too far back to challenge for honours, but he might be able to gain a place and get himself into the top 3 in the championship, assuming he keeps out of strife. So, right now, Alexei Nesov pushes on. Is he going to be in this time at the end of, for him, lap number 18 as he comes out of the chicane? He's up the curb. He stays out for 1 more lap, as does Nikolai Kiergaard behind him. So those 2 come through, but then you've got Charles Wirtz coming into the pit lane in the BMW. Now, Wirtz was another one that got a penalty earlier on, and he is in. Eteki is in as well, Gazo is in, and Mies serves a pit stop this time also.
Very curious to see where Nicholas Kiergaard falls into line once all these pit stops are done, because that is a car, the only car in the field that has not scored a point in this season but has raced in every race. And at the moment he sits 3rd in class. Now, there are a few drivers in the pro class that have already pitted, so difficult to know. But I'm really impressed with Kiergaard today. The McLarens are working well.
He was a very good single-seater racer before he came into GTs in the real world. He's also pretty handy in historics when he races his dad's cars in that, and I think is a bit underrated in GT3 terms. So the McLaren, which isn't necessarily suited to every circuit, when it's suited to a track, it flies. He looked really good, but we don't have enough of those venues, you could argue. Right now he is looking good, not as good as Crestani, who continues to absolutely sledgehammer the opposition.
Remarkable. That Lamborghini in his hands working very well, yes. Sandy Mitchell and Jordan Pepper have got themselves caught up in various issues which has compromised their speed somewhat, but Crestani on another level. Let's not forget, Lauren Heinrich is a Works Porsche sim racing driver. Yes, he's a Works Porsche real-world driver, but that matters little in this particular arena. Crestani is wiping the floor on him, and Lamborghini doing an incredible job to make sure that car runs well.
Yes, on face value, he's wiping the floor with him, but I still have this little voice, as you see Nesov pit, this little voice in the back of my head saying that actually Heinrich is doing everything he needs to do, which is to lead his class, take the points. Doesn't matter where he finishes overall, as long as he wins his class, as long as he stays ahead of Guven, well, he's out, and Sandy Mitchell, who's a long way back. So actually, maybe Crestani is being flattered a little bit by a safe drive, a champion's drive by Lauren Heinrich.
Yeah, and Callum Williams has a BMW that's heavy as well, sitting in 3rd position. So you may be right, but a bit of smoke.
Oh, well, no, equally, Crestani's done the fastest lap of the race, so he's not lucked into this. He is not leaving anything on the table. He's also now served his pit stop, as has Williams, as has Heinrich. And so the order is shuffling a little bit as a consequence of all of that. Now Heinrich's got a drive-through. What is that for? That's just come up on the graphic.
If that is an automated one, then that will be from speeding in the pit lane, and it's something that in-game has been decided, so it can be cleared by race control if they don't deem it necessary, but it's a slam dunk. And I think that Laurin Heinrich here could have, it's not handed Sandy Mitchell the victory, that's for sure, but it's not looking as rosy as we were just mentioning.
Another penalty being offered up, and it goes to number 19, Pierre-Louis Chauvet, for an unsafe rejoin. Not for the first time, I think. The penalty heads in his direction. 25 minutes of the race and counting. So now Laurin Heinrich is the one to watch. Lots of debris on the road there after that marker was demolished. There's a very vocal Jordan Pepper over our shoulder as well. But he leads on the road, and he...
Well, no, he's vocal because he's missed his pit window. And he's telling he's speaking to his team saying, how did we manage that? The window is now shut. He hasn't come into the pits. It's very clear because he hasn't served his 10-second penalty.
Quite right. Yeah, the window is closed. Yeah.
No wonder he's frustrated.
So the penalty will be added on for not pitting in the regulation window, and that's going to compromise it even more on top of the 10 seconds that he's already picked up for a couple of incidents. Yeah,
he can run until the end. The game is not going to penalise him. Stop and go penalty here for Crestani, our leader. He's into the pits a lap after needing to serve. So
30 seconds.
What's he done? I don't know whether that's speeding in the pit lane. This has changed the game completely. Callum Williams now is going to end up in the lead of the race. Crestani is speeding in the pit lane, but then what is Laurin Heinrich then? If a stop-go 30-second penalty is speeding in the pits, it's a huge penalty, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Absolutely
right.
But
the game decides it.
Right, well, Crestani's going to be very disappointed, to say the very least. Jordan Pepper is going to be pretty irate after missing the window. So as you rightly say, Ben, this throws everything up in the air. Let's see how it all pans out with 23 minutes on the clock. So Laurin Heinrich, I think, is track limits. The race order, notionally, is Jordan Pepper leading from Callum Williams at the moment. As you look at this battle between D'Amato and Nicholas Bart ahead of him in the Audi, 14th and 15th. That's going to be the real race leader, Callum Williams, with Laurin Heinrich behind. Now, has Heinrich served his drive-through? He's not, has he? Yet, so he's going to drop back.
So that's for track limits. So the game has decided that he's gained an advantage by driving off the circuit. And within this platform, it is so clever the way that they calculate if you gain an advantage. It's not car off over the white line penalty. It is, have you actually gone faster than you've previously gone at that same part of the circuit? So Laurin Heinrich taking an advantage. That's going to mean drive-through. Not quite as severe, weirdly, as the stop-go 30-second penalty that Crestani has had. And for Jordan Pepper, well, you're not going to pit now, are you? Because you're going to get a penalty regardless. So he's going to stay out until the end of the race and then see what penalty the game gives him, plus the 10-second penalty, of course, that he's already been given as well.
Nicholas Bart under attack still. Daniele D'Amato in the Dynamic GT Porsche looks every which way for a move, and he does dive up the inside going down towards turn 10, runs out of road. One up, one back then for D'Amato as Nicolas Bart comes back through on the inside, gets a big whack in the back, but in fairness to D'Amato, he didn't then try and dive up the inside and take advantage of that.
Just a bit of a hurry up, wasn't it? Just come on, let's go. Heinrich in the pits now, serving his drive-through penalty. Where's this going to put him back out onto circuit once it's done? I don't think he loses that much time, to be honest. No, dropping down to 12th, 13th position. So it's been hard for our top two in the first half of the race. There is Heinrich out of the pits. And according to the graphic, he's 6th, but he's not. I think he's 12th behind Gil Magnus.
Yeah, and Crestani, who dominated stint 1, is now 18th. So, wow, what should have been a runaway win for speeding in the pit lane has all rather fallen apart. Laurin Heinrich then is in 12th place. Now, he is therefore 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th in class. At the moment, he's out of the points. However, so is Sandy Mitchell out of the points. So it's still advantage Heinrich for the championship, even if he doesn't score.
And somehow Heinrich's still ahead of Sandy Mitchell as well.
Exactly. And we lost Guven earlier on. This is D'Amato, who is getting ever more fed up, staring at the back of that rather twitchy Audi, coming out of turn 4, down the hill, through 5 and 6. So Jordan Pepper's advantage is 24.4 seconds, but it's a slightly phony one, given that he didn't pit in the regulation window. So that's all got to be resolved post-race.
Yeah, so effectively our leader is Callum Williams in the BMW, 5.8 seconds ahead of Adam Ateki in the Boutsen VDS Audi. But that is just emphasising the gold class victory for Team WRT. Then Dan Harper in third position for BMW.
Who is therefore the leading pro if you take Jordan Pepper out of the mix. So Dan Harper is a class leader. This is Christopher Mies. Now, he has just got on with the job in hand here, hasn't he? He started 22nd, and he is now running 10th on the road, which could be even better with these Damocletian penalties. So Mies goes through and is still pushing, and he's hunting down Charles Weerts, with whom he had a battle in the earlier stint.
Charles Weerts is second in class if you ignore Jordan Pepper, although not entirely sure where Jordan Pepper will end up at the end of the race once he's been given a penalty, because it's not going to be last, is it? But it's so it's a bit of a mystery with those 4 pro cars, Weerts, Mies, Magnussen, Laurin Heinrich in 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, whether actually Jordan Pepper is going to fall into that group above it or below it.
Yeah, quite often if you don't serve a stop, it is translated into a 30-second penalty post-race in the real world. Now, if you gave him 30 seconds, he'd only drop 1 place. He'd still win the class, and he'd be behind Callum Williams. So I'm sure race control are looking at this, but we'll see what they apply for not stopping within the window. They could give him a stop-go penalty, commensurate to that.
A stop-go 30-second would be more realistic.
Absolutely,
bearing in mind that Crestani, for speeding in the pit lane, got a stop-go 30-second, which is heavy. If Jordan Pepper, who didn't even go into the pits, does anything less than that, then it's a difficult one. But the game will decide, because it's within the game, within the platform, that particular penalty.
Just over our shoulder, we can see Jordan Pepper at work, then the on-the-road race leader. So trainers off, stocking feet on the pedals, putting a lot of effort into hanging on to the race lead, and he's got that 10-second penalty to serve, plus whatever comes after it. That is the little bit that might tip him over the edge, as it were, and drop him even further down the order. We're looking at the race control channel in Discord to see what, if anything, is going to head his way as Laurin Heinrich goes over the line and gains a place. Does he ahead of Gilles Magnus? Yeah, up into 11th on the road now is Heinrich. Look how much of Barcelona he uses then to get the optimum line down to turn 1.
Quite similar coloured liveries on those 2 cars, but they are very, very different vehicles and teams as well. Rutronic versus Come To You Racing. Come To You with different liveries on each of one of their cars as well, but all faithfully recreated in Assetto Corsa Competizione from the real-world liveries that you see in the 3-hour race here at Barcelona on Sunday.
Breaking news, Fabrizio Crestani is up into 15th place. Now, he has gained 1 spot, so he's still chipping away. He's still got the fastest lap, even though the cars now are getting lighter once again. He set that earlier on in the race. So the leader, Jordan Pepper, leader in quotes that is, has done 24 laps, and his last lap was a 45.4. He's fractionally quicker than Callum Williams, who in turn is doing what he needs to do. He's leading his class.
Crestani, therefore, has a point. He did have 5 in his silver class lead, but now down to a single point in silver as he passes Sam de Jong for that point as well. But doesn't change much in terms of our championship, with Cesar Gauzu leading that class, Alex Acker second in class, and Alexei Nesov third in class. And as that stands, it would not change the championship in silver whatsoever.
No. Now, Callum Williams ahead of Adam Ateki, and then Charlie Fagg third in gold. In silver, it is Cesar Gauzu from Alex Arca from Alexei Nesov. So that's the situation there. Remember that silver was being led by Gauzu coming into this race. Well, he's the leader of the class, so he's on target for the championship, as also WRT Callum Williams, who's had help this year from Jean-Baptiste Simonar, who's done some of the driving in that car. And as we've been saying, Laurin Heinrich is heading for pro honours with 16 minutes still on the clock. There are on-track battles to be resolved. Charlie Fagg versus Alexei Nesov, and then Nikolai Sheargard is that behind him, except Sheargard has lost a lap somewhere. He's down in 22nd place.
Yeah, I've just asked the director to see if he can find it. Sounds like he was speeding in the pit lane as well, and so got a stop-go penalty.
Right.
So all of that bigging up I was giving him, unfortunately, has come to naught for Nicola Kiergaard, and he drops to the bottom of the field.
He does, and yet he's kind of where he would have been without the penalty in terms of track positioning with those 2.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit of a quirk. Now, of course, if that were a real race, you would probably have had a safety car so that the debris could be removed, but it remains on the road. 1 or 2 drivers just brush it aside as Nesov is on the back of Fagg. Kiergaard on the tail of the two. Interesting to see how the McLarens are going here as a taste for what we'll have in the real world on track tomorrow. Free practice and then pre-qualifying. 2 90-minute sessions given over to the GT3 cars tomorrow here. Yellow flag out somewhere, Ben.
Yeah, it's Paul Everard who's parked up, having been disqualified from not serving penalties, as Alexei Nesov tries to do the switchback and gets the inside line through the final turn. That was a move that took a couple of corners to sort out, and it won't be established until he gets all the way down to turn 1. The yellow flag there on the start line because Everard's car is somewhere parked up along it, although you can't see. Alexei Nesov has the inside line. The McLarens look faster at terminal velocity, don't they? But the Mercedes of Mad Panda claims turn 1 and moves up ahead of Charlie Fagg.
Brave stuff that by Nesov, and you could see him teeing it up. A move at turn 1 starts coming out of turn 13, doesn't it really? You've got to get the toe, you've got to get the track position all the way down to turn 1. And it's fascinating to watch that run from the last corner to the first and to see what works in a straight line. Is it power or is it aero? And a little bit of a rub there gets Nesov sideways. He's been in the wars in this race, but he keeps bouncing back. He fights back, and the commitment of Nesov is really impressive, I reckon. Yeah,
these races have always been entertaining in this Fanatec Arena, and there always is a certain amount of elbows out. They don't mean to do it. Certainly now in year 3 of this championship, there's far more politeness and respect between the drivers. They're not coming in and playing a game and shunting each other off. It's great racing, and it scores big points in the Fanatec Boost for the overall championship, and it scores money as well. The teams or the drivers take a big pot back with them thanks to Fanatec.
Big dive by Charlie Fagg to try to go around the outside. He's done it there before, but he doesn't do it this time. Alexei Nesov is able to just about fend him off. And as they head now down into the chicane once more, Charlie Fagg, another driver who's not losing a place, lying down. Nikolai Schiergaard's McLaren is fading though, having been with them a lap ago. It's absolutely dropped off the back now, so he is somewhat distant as up the curb goes Nesov. 13 minutes are on the clock as the battle comes through. Alex Arca in the meantime is doing another good job. He's ahead of this fight and he's in 6th place, 2nd in the Silver Cup. Nesov is a silver, Fagg is a gold, and together they run 7th and 8th, and they're absolutely together on this climb up through turn 3 now.
I love how the sound of these cars is so faithfully recreated, and especially to turn 3. I think we know this circuit best, of course, for its F1 escapades, and it isn't really a corner turn 3, it's flat out in a Formula 1 car, but in these GT3 cars, they really are on the very edge of traction. Either the front is breaking away or the rear is breaking the way, and they're having to breathe off the throttle, and it does make it such a challenge.
This is Heinrich on Weerts then, so 9th and 10th on the road. Charles Weerts in the red BMW ahead, and Laurin Heinrich goes one side and then the other as they drop down the hill through 7 and 8, the climb up again. And Laurin Heinrich goes to the outside line at the top of the hill. He needs to try and duck up the inside. He ain't going to do that there. And he's also coming under attack. Christopher Mies, 11th in the blue Audi, is right with them as well. So 12 minutes of the race, 12 minutes of the season remain, but there's a lot that will shake out of this as Weerts has to go defensive. Heinrich stands his ground on the outside, but he runs wide. Weerts is going to be able to fend him off, is he? Up the curb goes Laurin Heinrich. The Porsche versus the BMW. The winner out of all of this could be Mies, and Weerts gets roughed up. He goes wide. Heinrich gains a place, and now Mies does as well. As Weerts got damaged, because all of a sudden that car looks compromised, doesn't it? Bouncing over the curb is Gilles Magnus, but Charles Weerts doesn't even have the fight anymore.
Well, he's just a bit flustered, isn't he? I think he probably felt as though he could hold on to that position through 12, but unfortunately it was that slight bit of contact that pushed him wide. The slide will have overheated the tyre as well, and so it just might take him a couple of moments to compose himself and get back to it as we watch Gilles Magnus staring at the back now of that BMW, and switch our attention to Sandy Mitchell, who has Sam de Jong just ahead, down in 16th position this is.
Okay, so it's Audi ahead of Lamborghini, and Sandy Mitchell close enough perhaps to think about a move. What he does, he sort of feints to the inside, but nothing comes of that. There's another yellow flag out somewhere, possibly still covering the Everard Audi that has parked up. Mitchell gets a good run out of 2, but he's on the outside heading into turn 3. Needs to get the undercut now and then be on the inside line for turn 4, but he's not quite close enough to the back of the Audi to really make that work.
And the undercut through 3 is just so hard because of what we've just been explaining. I tell you what, Sandy Mitchell looks pretty composed considering how hot it is in the Fanatec Arena. One of the characteristics, I think, of this arena over the 3 years has been just how warm it gets. And that just adds another level to the challenge for the drivers who are not obviously in their race gear, and they try and wear as little as possible because of how hot it is.
But it is interesting to see who wears what. Yes, they're in team gear. Some are in trainers, some are in racing boots, some are in the stocking feet. Sandy Mitchell has gloves on, whereas others don't. So different strokes for different folks and all of that. But it is interesting to see how people prepare. One or two even wearing a kind of sunglass effect to get rid of some of the glare off the huge screen that sits in front of them. Right, Sandy Mitchell has got the pace, but Sam de Jong's Audi just won't get out of the way, will it? And here is Sandy Mitchell's chance then as you ride on board with him, hustling the Lamborghini around, but still the KPax racing car is denied.
Hard to find any space, and he's not quite close enough to dive down the inside of the chicane. Almost just needs to set it up through the chicane. Oh, de Jong's run a little bit wide there, so he's going to be... Oh, he's made a mistake through the final turn. That's unusual. A little bit of a wobble, and it's side by side down the main straight. But Sandy Mitchell should have this easily done, and he does.
Does indeed. So,
well,
yeah, de Jong fights back, but I think under normal circumstances, Sandy Mitchell ought to be able to hang on to this, and he does. Heading into turn 1, de Jong gave it a good go, but Sandy Mitchell positions the car, comes out on top then, and now just look at him try and stretch that margin. He is up into 16th, Crestani is up into 14th, and it's still Nessov 7th, ahead of Fag in 8th place here. 8.5 minutes and counting. Jordan Pepper still leading by 23.5 seconds, but these assorted penalties and investigations are going to do for him, and in fact the game will disqualify Pepper when he finishes the race for failing to serve a mandatory pit stop. The game will disqualify Jordan Pepper, so that solves having to worry about where a penalty drops him to. Ignoring completely. So Callan Williams is the leader from Adam Matekin. It's 6 seconds between the two, who are also 1 and 2 in gold.
well, we kind of knew that was going to be the case, but now we know that Pepper won't even feature in the result at all, so we don't have to worry too much about where he will place. Lauren Heinrich's got himself up into second in class in the Pro. As there's contact, Schalvers gets put sideways. He's going to lose 3 positions, and there's the frustration on his face as well. It was Christopher Mies who created the space. Here comes Mario Zug, who is on a recovery drive basically today after being turned around at turn 1. Yeah. He could have won the gold category, but not whilst Callan Williams leads the race.
But he's up to 4th in class and has now put himself up into 11th overall ahead of Gilles Magnus. Charles Witz, I think, was in 2 minds as to whether to persevere, but he has carried on, albeit now down in 13th place overall. Meantime, Nessov versus Fag together, and look, Sheargard has caught back up again in that lapped McLaren.
Oh, I'm gutted for Nicholas today because I thought big points were on offer for him, and just a little mistake with speeding in the pit lane. It's a fast entry to the pit lane and very easy to overrun, and the game is punishing you hard for doing that, and so we haven't really seen speeding in the pit lane being an issue across the year so far, but 2 big penalties today with cars being a bit too fast when they go into the pits. And Sheargard is showing that he can hold on in the top 10.
Now, bearing in mind the game has announced it's going to throw Jordan Pepper out at the end, why persevere? Because he's not going to achieve anything. Disqualification is there. So Jordan is carrying on, but for no reward, as you look at Charlie Fag, who is going to benefit for a place gain with the exclusion of that Lamborghini. He's dropped back, hasn't he now, a little bit from Nessov. So the Mercedes AMG, for the moment, has a slightly clearer ride. And Christopher Mies now being given a 5-second penalty for the incident here with Charles Wirtz a lap ago.
So will that put Gilles Magnus up into second in that class now? Gilles going to have to keep in touch with the guys ahead of him because 5-second penalty would be pretty close to getting him up to second position in the category. And that's great for... Don't forget that we have our championships, but this is also points going into the real world. So every point really counts when it comes to the final classification after Zandvoort in a couple of weeks' time.
That's right. So the Endurance Cup, which takes these points, and then you have the isolated championship of Endurance. Then you can add Endurance to Silver to get the overall, the combined championship, and that will all be resolved at Zandvoort in 2 weeks' time with the 2 1-hour sprint races. And October, Zandvoort, seaside, wind, rain, sand. It's going to be an interesting track surface. A far cry, no doubt, from the sun of Barcelona this weekend. Now, the race has got 5 minutes to go. The season has got 5 minutes to go. Esports season, that is, for this championship. As you look at this fight dropping down the hill. Christopher Meets then with a penalty to come ahead of Marius Zug, ahead of Gilles Magnus, then the recovering Charles Weerts. Further back, Sandy Mitchell has dropped back behind Sam de Jonge once again. So that has flicked around, 16th and 17th, and then Sandy Mitchell retakes it. So the two of them having a proper fight. But Callan Williams, 6 seconds to the good. Last time he was fractionally slower than Adam Ateki. But Callan Williams looks as though he is on target for a race win, and it will be the Team WRT BMW's second of the season in the class.
And he's had a podium at every single one of the championship rounds as well. So that's a huge, impressive effort from Team WRT. Baptiste Simonauer, who was also not particularly strong a driver back in the early runnings of the Fanatec Arena, also contributing to that. Marius Zug, will he pick up points today? Yes, he will. Yeah. So he also will have a 100% record of scoring at every single round, but he won't have 100% record of podiums every round. What have we got here? Alex Acker through turn 10, the old turn 10.
Third in class, but this is a replay. Let's see
no
what
one
he does.
Around him.
Self-induced, that.
Just touch that curb and just unbalances the rear axle and makes him spin around
and that's
and
it.
Around. Oh!
Gets drilled by Charlie Fagg.
Come on, he was doing his inner Ken Block there.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid to say that has done for Charlie, and it's also done for Alex Arca. So the McLaren has picked up some damage, although he did actually survive ahead of Lauren Heinrich, but it's going to be a bit dog-eared, that car, on the way to the end. I wonder whether Arca might cop a penalty for an unsafe rejoin from that.
I mean, he wasn't really rejoining, was he? At what point was he rejoining? At what point was he out of control?
At what point was it safe? All right, let's go with that line of questioning instead. Heinrich is ahead of Charlie Fagg now. Changed for 7th place on the road. 6th in real terms with the exclusion of Pepper. Looking back from the Porsche, Charlie Fagg trying to wring everything out of that McLaren before the end of the race. That's Heinrich at work. Down to turn 10 they come. Still nose to tail.
Amazing recovery drive from Lauren Heinrich after picking that drive-through penalty up, presumably for missing the chicane. It's one of the places where you can really benefit hugely from being off circuit and back up to effectively second in class. He's not going to catch Dan Harper. It's going to be victory in that class for Dan Harper. But even with a 5-second penalty, I don't think he would have dropped behind Chris Meese, but Meese has got a 5-second penalty as well. Drive-through penalty for Alex Acker for his donuts.
Imagine my surprise, yes. So that's going to make him tumble down the order.
So it puts Crestani back up to 3rd in class then.
Right, having been the dominant overall race leader. I tell you what, why didn't you tell us who's not got a penalty? Because that'll save time. 2 minutes and 15 seconds are on the clock. This lap and one more for Jordan Pepper, but really for Callan Williams, who is the race leader. A flying lap is a 1:44 at the moment. So Callan Williams heading here up through turn 9 over the brow. So Williams from Ateki from Fagg in gold. In silver it's Gazo from Nessoff from Arca. And in pro it is Pepper in brackets from Harper, who's going to pick up the win from Heinrich and maybe Meese, or might be Magnus, or it might be Weerts, given that there are penalties in the system. But Fabrizio Crestani has done the fastest lap of the race, a 1:44.2 from earlier on. And the race leading car, that of Jordan Pepper, is on its last lap. But here is Callan Williams, who is going to take the race win on corrected times. So Dan Harper is going to be the pro winner. As you see there, the fight on between Charlie Fagg and Alex Arca. 8th and 9th on the road they run. Nikolai Schiergaard behind is a lap down in 21st place, and he is still pushing. Again, credit to Schiergaard. He could have bailed, but he's not. He's persevered. He's stayed in the game, stayed in the race, and trying to salvage anything he can. So with less than a minute to run now, they come down through the chicane. And Callan Williams looking very strong indeed, not only for gold, not only for the Gold Championship, but also, of course, for an inherited race win. Callan Williams just behind us here in the Fanatec Arena, behind our commentary position. And as he sets the car up now then for turn 5 at the bottom of the hill, back onto the power, kink at 6. and then 7, 8 wriggles up the hill. That's 6. Stand on the brakes. Lots of people clip the curb and run wide here and drag the gravel back onto the road, but that's a good line. Steep climb up the hill, up towards turn 9. Turns in, over the brow, rattles up the curb on the outside, a mop of the brow, and then downhill. This is turn 10. Stand on the brakes, down through the gears, down to second, down to first, turn in, fight the car up the hill now. Crash it up the curb, grab second, grab third, go left, go right. And Callum Williams then is on target to take the race win. Jordan Pepper is already home as the on-the-road race winner. But Callum Williams, you're riding with him, he's coming down towards the chicane. Still don't know whether Jordan's got the message about being disqualified, but he's persevered to the very end, which slightly puzzles me as to why, if he didn't know. So, up towards the line, Callum Williams is going to be the race winner, and for WRT, he is going to be the gold champion. Callum Williams, a great effort. He takes the race win. He takes the championship here in Barcelona. A great drive by Callum. Adam Ateki comes through behind for second place. Dan Harper is going to be third, and he will win pro. And Cesar Gazo is the man that comes home in fourth place and wins silver in the championship, and he is a very happy man indeed. And what has been a relatively reserved Fanatec Arena for the bulk of the night has now erupted. So silver won by Cesar Gazo from Alexei Nesov and Alex Arca. Gold, Callum Williams ahead of Adam Ateki and Charlie Fagg the third. Whereas in the Pro Cup, it was Dan Harper from Lauren Heinrich and then provisionally Christopher Mies. But there might be some more penalties to float through the system. So the winning drivers, our champions as well, will make their way in a few moments over to the podium. Callum Williams there is very happy. So also Cesar Gazo as a champion as well. And Adam Ateki having come home also for Boots and VDS second in the race, so gold first and second. Callum Williams then talking about his race to the members of the BMW Sim racing team. And Boots and VDS celebrations are underway as well. So in a few moments, we'll get the drivers to the podium. Ben Constanduras has fled from the commentary position to go and coordinate all the ceremonies. And there are happy drivers as well making their way from their rigs over to the podium. Right, podium awaits, so too does Ben Constanduras.
Thank you very much, David. Let's have a few words from Callum Williams, who's looking a bit fresher now, but it was a sweaty hour's work in the cockpit.
Yeah, it's so hot in here. I mean, it's hot outside anyway, typical Barcelona weather. And in here with so many simulators running, so many people, it gets pretty warm. So yeah, it was a nice race. Carrying a little bit of damage from turn 1. Yeah, a little bit of top speed, but not too bad. So yeah, it was nice.
After success last time out, you must be surprised to have been able to repeat that here with the weight of the car.
Yeah, I mean, I think because I had a 20 kilogram ballast as well, because of the class positions in the last race. I think obviously the last round at Nürburgring was a little bit frustrating, getting taken out at turn 1 and then having to fight back. As fun as it was, you always want the raw result. So yeah, it's nice to come away today, first overall, and yeah.
Important points for the championship overall. A nice big check in your pocket. Do you guys enjoy coming here and doing this of a Friday evening?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. Really appreciate the help from BS Competition as well. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I only downloaded Assetto Corsa to do this season, so it's nice to be competitive straight away.
Good work, thank you very much. We're going to go and get our podium set up, so I'll hand back to David Allison for just a few moments.
Ben, thank you very much. Time to reflect on what turned out to be another very good race. Partly, I think, not only because of the weight and the grid, but incidents early on putting people out of position. Certainly qualifying did help, didn't it, with having one or two drivers a little bit further back on that grid than you might otherwise have expected. But it's turned out to be a really good race, and it's a cliche, isn't it, to have races of two halves, games of two halves, but it was, because what we had in the first stint was very different indeed from what we had in that second, with the penalties going to Lauren Heinrich, also to Fabrizio Crestani, who had dominated the early part of the race, then to get that stop-go 30-second penalty, which really did for him, that drive-through for Lauren Heinrich as well, giving us a very different situation. And, of course, that miscommunication between Jordan Pepper and the KPax team, forcing him ultimately to be excluded. He picked up time penalties anyway for incidents, but then to suffer the ignominy of being excluded, well, that turned everything on its head once again, didn't it? So a very different order at the end. But lots of good racing, few little incidents, and that's another reason why penalties came, because of contact. But some good racing across all the classes. And in the gold competition, as you were hearing, Callum Williams, with the extra weight for being a winner last time out, combating that very impressively indeed, and taking a class win, which is what he needed to do, and of course inheriting the outright win. Great stuff here in the Fanatec Arena. Let's rejoin Ben.
Thank you very much, David. We'll get our podium for today's race up here, our top three. But also, if you have won a championship, then stick around, because we will crown our champions afterwards. Let's first go then with third position overall in that race from Rover Racing BMW. Congratulations, Dan Harper. In second position for Boots and VDS Audi, it's Adam Ateki. Great noise from the team here. But winning the race in a BMW for Team WRT, it's Callan Williams. And we're now going to welcome Florian from Fanatec to present the trophy to our third position driver, Dan Harper, our esports manager from Fanatec. And the check for €5,000. Nice. The trophy and the check for our second position driver will be presented by Davide, the game designer of Assetto Corsa Competizione, to Adam Ateki. And there is a €7,500 check as well. And finally, we welcome back Florian from Fanatec to present the winner's trophy, the steering wheel, to Callan Williams. And how about €10,000? Yes, please. We'll have a few photos for our media here this evening. Slightly awkward way to put a hat on with a trophy in the other hand, but well done. Photographers, are we all happy? That is your top three then for today. But stick with us, because we're about to do our champions. Congratulations to our top three tonight. So now I'd like to announce the champions of our different classes here in the Fanatec Arena for 2023. So in our silver class, please welcome up onto the podium, Boots and VDS. I think Cesar the Gazoo is going to come up onto the podium. If you can stand there in third position. Roy Merehouse also scoring points for Boots and VDS. And in the gold category, it's Team WRT. Here we go. Callum Williams and Jean-Baptiste Simonau scoring the points. And in the pro category for Rutronic Racing Porsche, Lauren Heinrich, the man who did a lot of work today and is the champion in pro for 2023. Yeah, you can stand on the number one. There you go. You can stand there. There we go. That's great. There you go. Your silver, gold, and pro champions for 2023. Congratulations. So that is it. And what we like to do here in the Fanatec Arena after a race like this is have a great party. We do have a race though tomorrow. The Sim Racing Series will be back for their final round at around 6 o'clock local time with the very best sim racing drivers from Assetto Corsa Competizione on these simulators. A massive thank you for this year for AK Informatica for organising this event, for Kuno Simulazione for building Assetto Corsa Competizione, and of course also to Fanatec for all of their support and this amazing arena and all the sims, and everyone else that has made this such a great weekend and such a great year of racing. We hope we can come back to you in 2024 with something even bigger and better. Thanks for watching, and make sure you tune into all of the action here from Barcelona, whether it be real or virtual. Enjoy your racing.